welcome back to another Stitches and Scribbles podcast. My name is Erin, and today I've got a couple of kind of rambly things to talk to you all about, considering it's back to school season, but we'll wrap it up at the end with some finished objects and of course what I'm working on and some craft fair updates, I guess. As of the day I'm filming this, this afternoon will be my first craft fair. So there's not a whole lot to tell you, but we'll get there when we get there. We are approaching the end of back to school season. I think all schools are back in session now, whether they're doing in-person, hybrid, whatever combination, I don't really know. Most of the schools around me are doing in-person with masks or some sort of social distancing, but I know that there are some schools that continue to do hybrid or virtual. I don't even know what to think anymore, other than I am personally glad that I am not going back to school as a teacher this year. However, the back to school season was a little difficult because I do miss my students and I do miss that passion for my job is the wrong word because I think that was gone by the time that I left. But that kind of routine, I'm still working on getting into a routine of my own. It's a little bit challenging because every day is a little different and I have different things to focus on. But even no matter how many things I get accomplished during the day, it still feels like I'm sitting at home doing nothing, and I know that that's not actually true because I made a lot of stuff and hopefully will be selling a lot of stuff in the next couple weeks, and I'm getting a lot of projects started that will eventually be sources of income, but it still feels weird to be sitting at home by myself. And I saw a lot of videos on TikTok of teachers decorating their classrooms, and it kind of restarted all of the feelings I had at the end of last school year of stuff that I knew I was going to miss. But I wanted to take a few minutes today to kind of explain a little more thoroughly why I'm not continuing with teaching, at least right now. Obviously, if the perfect job comes up at some point and it works for whatever me and my family are doing at that point, then I'm not going to rule it out. But I definitely was ready for a break from teaching, whether temporary or permanent. And based on what I'm seeing online from other teachers and even from former coworkers or friends in my own life, I know that my feelings were not unique. There were a lot of people going through the same situation as me, and I think that it's a bigger problem with the American school system overall. Obviously, if I liked teaching and it was a problem with just my school, I would have found a different teaching job. But I think the things that I was struggling with were bigger issues overall. So let's back up and explain those a little bit. The biggest reason why I quit teaching was burnout. I think I was burned out before all the pandemic issues started. If I think back to where I was in March 2020 and how frustrated I was at that point and how tired I was, I think that if the pandemic hadn't happened, there's a good chance that I would have quit that school year, been done June of 2020 instead of June 2021, just because of the level of frustration that I was at. And the reason for this is just the number of things that teachers have to do in a given week. So to give you some understanding of what teachers go through, teachers are responsible for planning their lessons. They're responsible for all grading and putting grades into whatever computer system the school uses. And parent communication. Those are the big three things that all teachers are responsible for, regardless of what school you're at. And then the other things that are following are obviously going to be dependent on school and the resources available at that school. But other things that teachers are responsible for are implementing behavior management systems. They might be responsible for writing their own curriculum if the school doesn't have their own curriculum, or if the curriculum is not actually tailored to the population that the school serves. Responsible for things like lunch and recess duties, which means that the teacher's lunch period is shorter. There may be after-school duties like running clubs, running after-school clubs, or after-school care programs, tutoring, anything like that. And those often come with their own planning of some sort. And then any outside of school events, so like school dances, back to school night, school social events, all of that stuff. And I was definitely, and there may be more depending on what your school is at, I had all of those things. So my school was stuck with a science curriculum provided by a previous administration that did not serve our students very well. It was not written with middle school kids in mind. I was a middle school science teacher, in case you were wondering. So I wrote my own curriculum. I took the standards, broke them down into units by myself, wrote all of the lesson plans, made all of my slides, made all of my resources, wrote all of my tests, worksheets, notes pages, everything was all written by me. And that took a huge amount of time every week. So I was lucky that I was able to loop my curriculum. So even though I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all 3 grades were doing the same lesson every day. So I was planning 1 lesson per day for 5 days a week of science, and they were 45-minute class periods. Planning those 5 lessons took me minimum 3 to 4 hours, depending on what I was doing. And 3 to 4 hours was about as much prep time as I got during the week. I got 45 minutes of prep 4 days a week. And sometimes those preps were taken up by other meetings or needing to contact parents. So that means that like all of my grading, most messages to parents, and any other like classroom things I needed to take care of happened outside of the school day, or like on my lunch break when I got there early, taking things home over the weekend, stuff like that. And that was a lot of time spent on something that I basically didn't have adequate time to do during the day. So for teachers who have to plan more than 5 lessons a week, that's a huge time commitment. Like you could easily spend your whole weekend planning lessons. I also was responsible for doing an after school club, which I eventually picked clubs that required 0 planning because I could not deal with another thing that I needed to plan for. So I actually taught knitting club for a while, which I didn't need to plan anything because it was just whatever the kids brought in, I would help them work on it. But before I had tried to do things like a sign language club or like seasonal crafts, and that was just too much to take care of. And I needed to minimize me going to get supplies for things. Excuse me, my throat's starting to get dry because it's really dry in here. But it was really overwhelming. And then when the pandemic hit, suddenly teachers were being flooded with messages about self-care and the importance of self-care and how to take time for yourself to practice self-care. And it was like it was another to-do list item. And I found myself wondering where that mentality was before the pandemic. Like, we knew before the pandemic that teachers were overwhelmed and burnt out from things. Like, I remember learning in college that, like 50% of teachers change careers in the first 5 years. So this was an issue long before COVID. and something that they even like taught us about and tried to prepare us for in school of like, this is what you're going to have to do, like doing after school programs, writing curriculum, like they tried to prepare us for it, but in reality, it's the pay that you get as a teacher doesn't make all of those extra hours worth it, especially if you are in any way like responsible for other people in your life, whether you're married with kids or taking care of relatives or just want to have a social life outside of your job. It doesn't leave a lot of room for that. And I talked to several colleagues who said, like, I can't imagine being a parent and a teacher. Like, those two things don't seem like they work together. And I know that there are plenty of teachers who do and have made it work, but I was both relieved and worried to hear that I was not the only person thinking that. So I decided to stop teaching. I don't know if it's something that I would necessarily completely rule out for the future. Like, if the perfect teaching job comes up in the next 5 years, like, I'd happily take it. But I definitely needed a break to reset because I was so burnt out that I, like, if I came home and had free time, I did not want to do anything. I wanted to, like, lay on the couch and watch Netflix. Like, sometimes even going to hang out with friends was too, like, felt like I was expending too much energy and I wasn't sleeping well. And just all this stuff kind of culminated in realizing that I needed to take a break. And I'm definitely happy with my decision, but the, like, back to school season, like seeing videos of teachers decorating their classrooms or talking about games to play with kids to learn names, like, I'm definitely reminded of all the things that I did enjoy about teaching. Like, I really did love planning curriculum, except for the fact that I didn't actually have enough time to do it the way that I wanted to. But designing lessons and labs and activities for kids to do to learn the content, like, I actually really liked, and I think I got really good at it. I'm disappointed that I got good at it out of necessity because my school didn't have a good curriculum, but I'm happy that I developed that skill, and I think that that can be useful for a lot of other things. I also obviously miss my students. I was really lucky to have such a great group of kids. I left teaching with so many funny stories and so many great memories of things that I did do with kids, but I'm definitely glad I'm not going back right now. I am also glad that I ended up signed up for a bunch of craft fairs, like, right during back to school season, because that has definitely helped take my mind off things. I also have some friends who are still teaching, so it's been nice to be able to, like, offer some resources to some of them, or say, like, hey, I'm here in case, you know, you need someone to help do a bulletin board for you, or you want a worksheet reformatted and need somebody to do it. Like, I love doing stuff like that. So, glad to have the distraction of doing craft fairs. But if there are any other teachers out there or parents who have kids in school who are watching your child's teacher, like, go through this year, please know that this is still not a typical school year for anybody involved. Like, there's still a lot of anxiety about what's going on. And in addition to that, like, a lot of teachers didn't really get a break over the summer because of worrying about what this school year was going to look like or trying to plan for something that they couldn't plan for. And there's a lot of teachers I know who did go back to teaching this school year, but are in the same place that I was around this time last year, of feeling like it was time to be done. So if you have teachers in your life, and you want to be supportive of what they're doing, offering to, like, even just help cut things out, especially little kid teachers, cutting out papers for them, like maybe planning some low energy activities so that you can still hang out and get social time with your friend, but it's not going to be overwhelming for them. And let them vent. Like, teachers are frustrated. People working in schools are frustrated, and a lot of the reasons they're frustrated aren't necessarily even COVID related. It's just the way that teaching works right now. So yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to say on that subject, but I hope that there's somebody out there who like resonates with this or feels the same way or knows somebody who's going through deciding to leave teaching or realizing that teaching is not what they thought it was going to be. I know that when shutdown first started, a lot of professional development programs and things kept using the phrase like, you have to put on your own oxygen mask before you can put on someone else's, meaning like you have to make sure that you're practicing self-care so that you can serve your school community and the people in your lives. But I think nobody stopped to realize that, like, metaphorically, teachers were searching for oxygen masks years ago. And now suddenly we're told, like, oh, you have to use it now. But we're not necessarily going to, like, tell you where it is or how to do it correctly or give you time to figure out how to operate things. This metaphor is falling apart. But I guess just be patient with people who are in teaching positions. And I know that teachers are not the only career field that has issues like this. And I know that there are also perfect schools out there that give teachers the time that they need to do things. But I hope that this helps somebody out there. And if you have more questions about teaching or like why I chose to leave, you can leave them below. I don't usually get a lot of comments on my videos. But if you have them, I'd be happy to answer them in a future podcast. Even though this podcast primarily deals with knitting, crochet, craft projects, as you can see from all the stuff behind me. So on that note, let's dive into what I've been working on. So as I like half mentioned, probably like 6 times already with the way that I talk, I am working a craft fair later today, as well as a couple more over the next few weeks. I don't have all of my finished craft fair items with me because they are already like packed up in my car ready to go this afternoon, but I did want to show you a couple examples of what I'm making, just to show off what I've been doing. Right now I've been working on a reserve of what I think my most popular items will be, so that if they sell out today, I've still got a couple that I can add in later. The first of those items being twisted headbands. I have seen these all over Pinterest. I've seen variations of these at Target and other like clothing stores, but it is sewn in the front to twist, but it's just an ear warmer headband. I am using half double crochet in the back loops only to create this like ribbing stitch. And this yarn is, I love this yarn in the color Desert Glaze, so it's nice and soft. In my basket right now I also have this one in black. This is the Feels Like Butter yarn from Lion Brand, and I think the color is just called black, but correct me if I'm wrong. Same stitch pattern, same closure method in the front with that little twist. I'll put my hand in, maybe you can see it a little better. I know it's hard to see on the black. And the third one I have is this one. This is in a Red Heart Super Saver. I believe the color name is Parrot Stripe, maybe. Otherwise there's a very similar colorway with that name. But this color, in addition to the blues and purples you see here, also goes into neon green and neon yellow. So if you see one that has all those colors, that's probably the one that I used. And again, same stitch pattern, same closure method to make that little twisted section in the front. The other item that I think is going to sell really well are crocheted pumpkins. So I have 2 different designs that I've been working on. There's this one, which is also that half double crochet in the back loops only with the little stem on top. I have a crochet pumpkin tutorial on my channel where I used a different stitch, but the directions are the same. You basically make a rectangle, cinch up the top like you would a hat, sew along the side, and then cinch up the bottom and kind of attach the top to the bottom by sewing through it and pull it in a little bit to make the divots on the top and bottom. And then you can add the stem. There's also a million other variations of making knit or crochet pumpkins. So you can check those out from other channels, or on my channel I have one knit version and one crochet version that you can check out. The other pumpkin version that I've been making is this one, which uses the star stitch. I think the original directions that I used for the star stitch were from Bella Coco on YouTube, but she uses UK terminology for her stitches, so you might want to look for one that is in the stitch terms most familiar to you. But I thought this gave the pumpkin a super cool texture and kind of looked like the sectioning that would normally be on a real pumpkin. I usually make both the pumpkins and the twisted headbands on my knitting machine, but I busted both of my knitting machines somehow. I did not know that on the Centro knitting machines, the yarn guide eventually wears down, so I was really disappointed to find that, because it meant my big Centro machine kept dropping stitches, which meant that like every time it happened I basically had to start over. And then on my little one on the 22 needle, something is wrong with mine where like it feels like the gears aren't connecting right, so it'll like get stuck on stitches, or like you're turning the crank and nothing happens for several rows or several like twists around. So I've been switching over to doing more hand crochet and hand knit items, which meant that like things are going a little slower. And I'm hoping that I make enough money from craft fairs that I can afford to get the Addy versions of the knitting machines, because I know that those are way better quality and it's easier to find like actual replacement parts instead of just getting a new machine, which I think is what you have to do with Centro. I've been trying to find some tutorials on how to fix the problems I'm noticing, but like I'm not confident enough in my abilities to like take the whole thing apart and put it back together again, especially because I'm pretty sure that I broke a piece in the little one. And the bigger one, the yarn guide, has just worn down over time. So hopefully I can get the Addy machines. If anybody is interested in commenting and has one or the other, let me know down below which knitting machine you prefer and why. I joined a knitting machine Discord group that I was invited to, and it seemed like most of the people in that group agreed that the Addy is way better and the pieces don't like wear down or break as easily. So I'm hoping that that will be a more permanent tool that I can use, because I would really not want to just replace the Centro machines every year, because I think I only got my big Centro in like, I want to say February or March of this year. So I think I've had it like less than 6 months, if I remember correctly. Unless that's when I got the little one. No, I'm not sure. But I think it was that recently, because I remember making knitting machine hats for a friend, and that was in like March, and I think I had just gotten it and was like showing off stuff, and that's why she asked for hats. But yeah, if you have an Addy machine and think that it works, or like tell me how long you've had it, I'd appreciate any and all comments in that department. I kind of just want to know if it's worth it, because they are quite expensive. Yeah, that's all the craft fair items that I have here to show you. I might have some more once craft fair season is over, like I can show you the leftovers of what didn't sell, but I'm also selling earrings and stitch markers. I have some machine knit and crocheted hats. I have all the pumpkins. I'm hoping to make some more little tiny Christmas wreaths. And I also have crocheted wall hangings. There's also a tutorial for that on my channel. I did a corner to corner one. And what else? Oh, I'm doing painted signs. I really wish I had one of those here to show you, but you can check my Instagram because I do have pictures of 2 of them on there. I had a pack of plain wooden signs that I just painted. And I'm hoping that those do pretty well because I think that they turned out super cute and they're definitely one of a kind. Let's move on to whips. I'm only going to show ones that I've like actually made progress on in the last week. I think I have a couple of whips that I'm going to have to retire or frog just because they're not turning out the way I wanted and I'm not working on them as much as I should. But I'll show you the ones that I have been working on. Dungeons and Dragons tutorial. At the point that this podcast is out, I already released one for the month of September because I had that one done already. Originally, this one was supposed to come out first. This is the half-elf rectangle shawl. And I released the half-orc cowl instead because it was already done. This one is just taking forever. I'm still not even done with the first skein, but I'm thinking that like, because I thought I was going to need like 4 or 5 skeins of this. I think I could maybe get away with like 2.5 because of how long this is already. Like, it could already almost fit over like shoulder to shoulder. So if it was double this length, it would like sit comfortably. So I might not need as much yarn as I thought, but it's still taking forever to finish it. So this was, where'd it go? The blue one is where I was last week. And then I've been moving the green one just to show how much I'm doing every day. So this is what I did last night while watching Bachelor in Paradise. So I'm making progress. Like, we're getting there, but it's still like a very fine yarn and taking forever. So that one can be the October Dungeons and Dragons tutorial instead of the September one. The other thing that I've been primarily working on is a prayer shawl. I think I mentioned, yeah, I would have talked about this in the last podcast, that I joined the prayer shawl committee at my church, and this was the one that I started. This stitch marker is where I was last week. I made myself some little mushroom stitch markers. So not a lot of progress on that one, but like I said, I've been working on craft fair stuff just to be ready for that. And I've got one more whip. Oh, I took the hook out because I used it for something else. But I'm working on a spiderweb shawl for myself. I made a mini one last year and ended up gifting it to somebody who was going to use it as a decoration, but I wanted an actual shawl version, so I'm finally working on it. This tutorial is on my channel. There are also variations of it if you want more of a half circle, a full circle, or like one to hang in the corner that you can find on YouTube, but I'm really excited about this. I have like a Wednesday Addams style dress, like the black with the white collar, and I'm thinking that it'll look cool with that for like Halloween events. I think that's it for this podcast. If you have any questions or comments, like, leave them in the comment sections below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more crafty content. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind to those teachers in your life, especially if you are talking to your child's teacher at school. Remember that like a lot of the decisions being made about this year, your child's teacher was not responsible for. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks, everybody. Bye.